Hello, tonight I'm going to help you make one of my favorite dishes ever, pierogi. There are many ways to make pierogi, but the way I like to make them and the way we make them at Jack's is how I'm going to show you tonight. We're going to start with a saucepan and we're going to have it preheated to a medium-high heat. We're going to start with about 3 to 4 ounces of good old-fashioned butter. If you have some clarified butter, that works great too. But not everybody does, so I'll use regular butter. We're going to start with the butter and we're going to add about a quarter of a sliced yellow onion. And this will cook fairly quick and it's going to stay in the whole time with the pierogi. So we're just going to turn it once or twice, kind of mix the butter around, get it a little translucent. And then we'll add just a little more heat. Once the butter melts down and that onion starts to soften just a little, we're going to push the onion aside and we're going to add the pierogi. We're going to do 6 at a time. And sometimes along the way you may need to add a little bit more butter. And we'll go over that here shortly. So I'm going to place the pierogi pillow side up. We add a little Jack seasoning. If you don't have Jack seasoning, a little salt and pepper will be fine too. Or whatever your favorite spice is. Just want to give a little extra flavor to the pierogi. So we're going to put these in here, medium-high heat, pillow side up, for about 1.5 minutes. I'm going to start my timer just to make sure we do it right. Most people can't sit still, so they'll want to push the onions around a little bit or the pierogi, but I suggest leaving the pierogi as is for 1.5 minutes, and then we'll flip them. We'll flip them from here to pillow side down, and we'll repeat the 1.5 minutes. And like I said, you may or may not need to add a little bit more butter. Of course, while you're doing this, you can always pour your favorite wine. Maybe a little Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc tonight. Just a little taster. A lot of people like to boil pierogi. You could also boil pierogi and then finish them this way, but shorten it up. This is my favorite way, and you'll see why here shortly. If you have a non-stick pan, that's going to be best, and you're going to need a lid or a cover for it as well. Move those onions a little bit. Okay, we're coming to the tail end of the timer here, and we're going to carefully flip our pierogi. And again, I didn't mention you want to start with these from frozen, otherwise they get a little gummy and hard to handle. So you can see they're getting a little golden brown, and now we're going to do the same on the pillow side, and we'll reset our timer. Just move this around a little bit, keep an eye on the butter. So far we're looking pretty good. I have a little sip of wine, a little Christmas music in the background. What we're going to do after this, when we flip them back up, we're going to set them pillow side up and we're going to add water, about 1/2 cup of water. And then we're going to cover it. When we add the 1/2 cup of water, that will mix in with the butter. That will steam them all the way through, almost like a dumpling. And then that butter will reduce down to a little bit of a sauce. So we might add just a tad more butter right before we do that. I'm going to try to flip these onions a little bit so they don't get too done on one side. Just did 1/4 of an onion for this. If it was just me, there would be 1/2 an onion in there. Us Polacks really like our onion. So we're getting the butter's reducing pretty good. So we're just going to do about maybe one more ounce. it's not ounce, 1 more tablespoon, excuse me. Okay, now we're gonna flip the pierogi back. You can see some of the seasonings catching, and both sides are golden brown. You get a little bit of a crisp on them, but from frozen, they won't cook all the way through like this without kind of burning. So that's why we just do both sides, 1.5 minutes, and then, as I mentioned, we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of water, and we're gonna put the lid on, and we're just gonna let them steam to a finish. While this reduces, you might want to give it a little shake and bake, or a little slide here once in a while. You don't want the bottom of the pierogi to stick to the pan, and they won't early on. And that's why if you have the right amount of water, you know, a little more than 1/3 to a 1/2 cup. The more water, the longer it steams. We'll just let that sit. We're at 2 minutes now. Like I said, we'll move this around a little bit, medium-high heat. Maybe sip the wine, get your plate ready for where you're going to serve it. A lot of people like to serve it with a side of sour cream at the end. I'm pretty traditional. I don't think it needs sour cream, but some people like to add a little sour cream. As you know, you've probably already bought some pierogi from Jack's. We have a great employee. His name is Julio. He's been with me 22 years, and he makes thousands and thousands of pierogi every month. And he made these. We'll sell these to go throughout the Christmas season and after the New Year as well. It's kind of a great New Year's Day brunch item as well. So as the 2 minutes winds down, you'll know that these will be cooked all the way through. If it seems like there's a little too much liquid, you can let it go a little bit longer, or just when you transfer your pierogi to the serving plate, you can leave a little bit in the pan. It's personal preference. Some people like more than others. So soften up the onions nicely too. Right when I take a sip of wine, time to go back to work. So we're going to reduce the heat. We're going to carefully lift the lid off. Don't want to burn yourself. And take a look. Those are looking pretty good. You can see there's still a little bit of liquid. We could have maybe done a little less water. But I think this is going to really help prevent it from sticking to the bottom. So from here, we're going to transfer it to a nice serving plate. I just happen to have a Jack serving plate here. And if you're gonna do another dozen or another 6 right after to complete your dozen, you can almost reuse the pan as is. Just add a little more butter. And just spoon those onions right on top. A little bit of sauce. And what they say in my native land at the end is Nostrovia.